I'm going to read it because I wrote it, and it's important to me, and I want to make sure I get it all in. So there is a wonderful writer called Eleanor Doan, and she writes, "You cannot kindle a fire in any other heart until it is burning within your own." And that's what Greg and you have, and that's why Secret Knock is what it is. And okay, I was asked to speak in Hong Kong about 5 years ago, and my friend Deanna, who I traveled with, kept asking me, what is it, why is it that you are so filled with such happiness all the time? I do have a high level of joy on a natural basis. I also have lived through deep levels of darkness, and I absolutely know the difference. I want you to know that no matter how far down the depths that you go, or how devastated you feel, you can make it back and better. I've learned from living through immense highs and incredible lows that a lot of it, besides choosing which thoughts to dispel and which to allow, is perception and perspective. What I choose to focus on in any given situation is what is magnified. I've learned to find the pretty. Some people call looking for the silver lining. Some people say don't turn a molehill into a mountain, and consider everything a molehill and you'll never have a mountain. There are so many deep aspects to this. All of us have our own pain tolerance and levels. There's no judgment here. Your hangnail might devastate you as much as my fractured foot. I was told by someone very wise a long time ago, never cry over anything they can't cry over you. It doesn't matter how many times I fall down, it matters that I get up one time more than I've fallen down. Failure does not have to be an option. A saint is just a sinner who has gotten up. Thomas Edison became famous for saying, "I have not failed 10,000 times, I have not failed once. I have succeeded in proving that those 10,000 ways will not work. When I've eliminated the ways that will not work, I will find a way that will work." Paul, one of the great and transformed men in the Bible, said, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope." Dr. Robert Masson is a great friend of mine. He is a neurosurgeon who used his amazing surgical skills twice on my neck and once on my lower back to fix the effects of a car crash I had when I was 19. I was told I should have died in that crash, and I didn't. Though it did devastate my neck and back, which decades later did show up, and he fixed it with surgical techniques that had never been done before. He says, adversity is opportunity. Every adversity is an opportunity to grow, to adapt, to overcome, and to be better. That's life. I realize we cannot experience God's miracle unless we are faced with challenges, don't you think? Fortitude, strength, wisdom, power, performance. I have deliberately and purposefully chosen paths that aren't the norm, and I've always known when I've chosen them that they would be successful. I've walked toward that success, never considering failure to be an option. My career as an actress, opening my men's store at age 25, which 33 years later continues to be a success, and is an absolute joy in my life. Thank you. I got pregnant at age 28, and the dad chose to walk away, and 29 years later, my phenomenal son is an absolute joy and such a privilege to know and to love. In spite of great hurdles, lulls, and pitfalls, or what I thought at the time to be pitfalls, it's like my life verse says, all things work together for good to those who love the Lord and are called according to his purposes. Each of us are specifically called for a purpose and a plan. Each of us has been endowed with particular gifts and insights solely meant for us. No two of us are alike. How extraordinary is it that in all this world, we have different fingerprints, different DNA, different personalities, different eye color. My joy comes from truly and deeply knowing I am loved just as I am by a God who created me before time began and loves me just the way I am, knowing that he is the potter and I am the clay. Each of us are separate and unique and individual, yet all of us need relationship and camaraderie and connection to be complete. For me personally, I'm willing to continue in this life to be molded into whatever it is God means me to be as I continue to transition and grow in the grace and love and freedom that comes from my ever-growing trust and hope in him. When I was 15, I starred in a TV series called Herbie the Love Bug with an amazing man named Dean Jones. Y'all know that, right? He spent time each and every day talking to me about God, about the God-shaped hole inside me that could only be filled with God. He spoke to me about discernment, and he and his wife met with my mom and I at church on Sundays. All of that was a first for me. I had no idea at the time how life-changing their influence on me would become. We've all experienced how life can change in a millisecond. Colt, recently, more than many. And with that, Greg and his family and all of us through him. This has caused me to think, so rather than give you wonderful, insightful, and real examples of how God has brought me through darkness to light, how I've learned to decide for joy rather than allow for darkness. And let me please first clarify, it's not been a one and done for me. It's been and is a process, an up and down and continuing to be molded and grown process. There was a time in my life when I was searching. I felt I had failed my mother for her being sick and not having the fulfilled life I knew she deserved. I felt I had failed myself by not being what I thought was expected of me, both from myself and what I perceived was the expectations of others, to be the best at everything. In hindsight, what even is that? So I was searching. I searched in places I'd never been allowed to go. I trespassed into deep darkness. I actually ended up living in real life some of the roles and characters I played in television shows. And the strangest part was that there was no director to say cut when I was in danger. I ended up on drugs. I ended up lost in very vile neighborhoods, and I had too many experiences to name. It all happened in a relatively short period of time for the many lifetimes I'd lived. But what I can say is I survived. And I absolutely believe that God had his hand on me the entire time. Even when I was being badly hurt, I wasn't maimed, I wasn't jailed. Obviously, I wasn't killed, and I'm here alive, well, and thriving to testify with my life that God is real and true. It's not necessary to go into the gory details because they're just that, they're details. What's important to note, again, is Romans 8:28. Remember, it's no matter what it is, all things work together for good to those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. My strength comes from knowing that it's his strength in me, his power that innately provides me with everything I need when I need it, and that's a peace more powerful than anything. The reason I give all credit to trusting my life and past and future to God specifically is because there's no human power or reason other than God for my having survived what I've been through with my sanity intact, my body well and healthy, and my heart both light as well as full of love. I've discovered through literal experiences that the truth for me is that the only reasonable and factual explanation for my well-being is God. So my point in telling you all this is this. No matter how far down you go or how devastated you feel, you can make it back by reaching out to a God who loves you even if you can't see, hear, or necessarily feel him at the time. I am proof of that, walking, talking, proof of that. And now that I've told you more about me than most of the world knows, other than my dearest and nearest closest people, I wanted to know if I could share something with you.
100%.
Okay. In 2014, I was at the OSIRIS-REx launch, and the next day at Cape Canaveral Beach, I saw these itty-bitty, teeny-tiny shells, and I wrote something. And now that you know more about me, it'll make sense to you. And it's right here. It's called the teeniest, tiniest seashell. The tiniest little seashell. God's love for the tiniest little seashell on the beach that thinks, how could God love such a tiny little seashell when it's so very, very small? God certainly must love the big, white, pristine seashells a whole lot more. Why should any attention be paid to something so small, so meaningless, so hard to even take notice of? Yet what's so incredible, what's so divine, what's so miraculous, what's so delightful, what's so utterly and completely true, not only does God make the galaxies, not only did God say, let there be light, and there was light, not only does God hold the world up and keep it from falling, this very same great and magnificent God is so deeply personal and loving that yes, He loves the tiniest little seashells. He takes the time to make each and every one different and beautiful and exquisite. This very same God who created the heavens and the earth and the stars and the moon, and yes, you as well as me too, this almighty and all-powerful, all-knowing, omnipresent God, who's the same yesterday and today and tomorrow, also literally knows how many hairs are on your head. He knows every thought that you have even before you have it. He knows every need, every want, every cry, every hurt, every wound, every victory, everything there ever is to personally and intimately know about you. This same God who knows your scars, your strengths, your weaknesses, your fears, your secrets, your hidden, I can't let anybody know that or see that. This same God loves you as his most precious and divine creation he's made. You, created in his very own image as companion to him, to be in relationship with him personally, familially. Have you ever experienced God's very funny sense of humor? He has one, you know. Have you experienced God's physical touch? His full body hug that feels like the swaddling of the sun that you don't want to see end, yet when it does, you're satisfied and not wanting? Have you experienced his voice in your head and just known, just literally known it was his? Have you ever almost had a car crash and it made no logical sense whatsoever at all why you weren't utterly and completely smashed to smithereens, yet you weren't? Has your own life ever been saved when you ought not to have lived? Has this happened more than once, more than twice, more than that even? God loves you. God loves me. God loves all of you. Some people only look for the perfect seashells to pick up on the beach, the big ones, the perfect, unchipped, big, plain ones, the big, plain, colored ones that you have to dive in the waves for. They haven't been smashed against the sand yet. The pressures of the grinding of the sand against them back and forth as they're dragged with the moving tides, and the crashes of the wave, the sedimentation, the mouths of the animals being the homes of various animals with claws, being stepped on by careless people who don't care. Actually, even if they were to care, often they don't even notice. In fact, were they even to notice, they'd be more likely to complain more than anything, for the shell on its beach, having survived the crashes of the waves, the grits of the sand, the animals that have clawed and lived within, not even to begin to mention the shell's life prior to even landing on the beach and surviving its journey, however long, however wonderful or not, and very treacherous in the ocean. These people would, yes, indeed, human people, would be yelling at these imperfect survivors for daring to cause them pain, for daring to be stepped on. I look for the small ones, the broken, forgotten ones, the imperfect ones, The looked over ones, those are the ones God can show his glory in the midnight hour with. Moses stuttered. Saul murdered Christians. Peter fished and denied Jesus 3 times before the rooster crowed. Each of the disciples were broken men. They weren't highly esteemed, powerful men, important and wealthy in their communities. Jesus had a manual labor job. He was a carpenter from an unwealthy family. Yet who is it that more people on the face of this planet to this day still argue most about? It's Jesus, who preached for under 3 years, never traveled by car, and had no computer to keep files of his sermons on. Jesus, whose Father is the source and definition and creator of love, life. Scientists to this day are searching and beginning to find the beginning of start of proof of life began after the earth formed, and there's no question about that. Genesis, he said, let there be light. And yet, after all of this, God says, I love you, tiniest little seashell. You are important to me. You are meaningful to me. I created you. The same I am who created the heavens and the earth. The same I am who gave my only begotten Son so people may be saved. Just as God, my Father and yours, would have given up his only begotten Son to die on the cross if to save only one person's sins here on earth, this same God who knows how many hairs are on each of our head, made and loves the tiniest little seashell.
What can you say after that? Like, Claudia, you're incredible. I've never seen you speechless. Claudia, can you give her another round of applause?
Yes. The tiniest of seashell.
Wow. Can you stand up to get that? Give her a round of applause. Claudia, you're incredible. Thank you. Thank you.
Love, love, love. And I saw somebody walking around